All right, well, we might get started because we do have quite a bit of content to get through today. Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. My name is Sarah Walker and I work in the sector development team here at QCOS. I just wanted to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I'm facilitating this webinar today, the Turrbal and Yagara peoples, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. QCOS would also like to thank First Nations peoples for the gift of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and we look forward to supporting work leading to a successful referendum to enshrine a First Nations voice to Parliament in the Australian Constitution, followed by Makarrata and Treaty. So I'd just like to encourage you all to please take a moment to use the chat function to let us know which traditional lands you're dialing in from today. We always have a variety of people from all over Queensland dialing into webinars, so it's a nice way to acknowledge the breadth of country and connection to land of our First Nations peoples. So this webinar today will be on reducing energy costs for clients. I know quite a few of you online today are involved in supporting the financial wellbeing of clients and service users.
Oh, Sarah, you've just gone on mute. I don't know how that happened.
Oh, that must have been an automatic thing. Yeah, so today we'll be looking at reducing energy costs for clients, and we'll be covering practical information and tips to help reduce energy bills, including understanding energy bills and where costs really come from. Also looking at concessions, rebates and hardship plans available, as well as energy efficiency and appliance running costs as well. So these tips and information you'll learn today will obviously help you support your clients, but they'll also be really useful for all of us because we're all energy consumers. So today we've got Luke Reade joining us to provide this content. Luke Reade is the founding president of Energetic Communities Association and is a policy advocate in the energy and climate change area. So for those of you who don't know, Energetic Communities Association is a Queensland-wide community organisation that advocates social and regulatory change to achieve a fast, fair and equitable transition to a cleaner future. They aim to represent the interests of households, communities and not-for-profit organisations to ensure that affordability, equity and low emissions are prioritised in the market design and regulation. So if you've got any questions while Luke is speaking today, please feel free to pop your questions in the chat and we'll address them throughout the webinar. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Luke, for the presentation. Thank you.
Sorry, got to turn myself off mute. Think we're used to it by now. You can see my presentation okay?
Yeah, we can.
Great. So thank you for that introduction, Sarah. You did a bit of my work for me, so thank you for having me today. I'd just also like to point out that we do have a bit of material to cover, and I'm more than happy to take any questions on notice. So if we don't get to your question at the end, I think this is pretty important stuff, so I'm more than happy to send an email afterwards. These slides will be shared afterwards. And there'll be a couple of extra slides that get sent to you that I won't be presenting, but they're just around more information and some links of where to go. And since this is hosted by QCOS, I'd like to acknowledge and thank QCOS. And also point out they do have an energy literacy course on their online materials that is worth having a look at as well. So more broadly, we work in particular at the moment around rental advocacy around energy efficiency, but also some of the larger market regulatory work. Most of what I'll be presenting comes from my time at QCOS in the past, YFS, other organisations where I've worked directly with households. So hopefully you'll find this material useful. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners. So I'm based in Meanjin or Brisbane on the Yagara and Turrbal people's land. And in particular, when it comes to energy, the injustice continues on. A lot of remote communities live in poor quality housing. They don't have agency to enact change in their own households. for a bunch of reasons. So just want to acknowledge that the system we have in place needs changing to allow fair and equitable access to energy. First of all, I just want to say what our position on energy is. It is an essential service. After a certain point, when you're using way too much energy, of course, there are questions around how essential it is. But for what we need for our day-to-day living, access to employment, using the internet, and increasingly running our homes and even driving cars, it is an essential service. It's there to serve the community, not the other way around. It includes participation in a fast, fair and equitable transition to a clean future. And no one should be disconnected for an inability to pay. The system should be structured so that everyone has access no matter what their income levels. That said, all consumers should know their rights and be able to access consumer protections, but the system shouldn't rely on this. And what I mean by that is that it should be designed so that consumers are put up front, not as a second thought. And this means not left behind, but designed for those households. This slide just represents where I'm going to go into the detail now. So there's a lot of costs that go into supplying your energy. The main one that main couple will be talking today around network costs. So that's the 43%. And then the retail costs. So the network costs are the poles and wires. They charge the retailers, who then charge you through your bill. The second big one is the retail cost, and that includes the cost of getting new customers, managing customers, doing your billing, etc. A big part of that is what they call CAC, which is the cost of acquisition and requisition, and that's one of their main costs, and that's when they want to get new customers or keep new customers, and it can be a big piece of the pie. So when you get your bill, in most bills, in what we call a flat tariff, there's usually two main charges. One is the fixed daily charge or supply charge, and that is the same for all households. So these amounts are just indicative. It depends on what offer you're in, but if you're in regional Queensland, they'll all be the same. And it doesn't matter whether you've got 1 or 10 people in the house, it will be the same. The second main charge is a variable charge, and generally this is your main usage charge, and that of course varies depending on how many people you are, what kind of equipment you have, how you use it, whether you have things like air conditioning or multiple TVs, etc., plasma TVs, which use a lot of power. And these are measured in kilowatt hours, the variable charge. When we look at the variable charge, generally what is known as Tariff 11, if you're in Southeast Queensland, it's up for the retailer. We have a market system. We have about 30 retailers, and they can have anything from 17 to 25 cents a kilowatt hour, but they can have more as well. In regional Queensland, it's set each year. This year, 22, sorry, that should be 22, 23 in the brackets. It's around 22 cents a kilowatt hour. And then there's a controlled load. So these are separate, separate metering that can occur usually for hot water. Tariff 31 is around is 15.6 cents in regional Queensland, but it can vary for SEQ, and Tariff 33 similar. It's a little bit more. Tariff 33 means that the retailer control it. You get to use it for 18 hours, and the distribution company, so Ergon or Energex, control when that would occur. Tariff 31 is for about 8 hours a day. And then there's a service fee, so that's around 90 cents for regional, and it can be up to $1.30 or more for Southeast Queensland customers, and a metering service charge. And the key here is to think about your bill. So if you have a high service fee, then energy efficiency won't be as impactful. If you have a lower service fee, you might have high variable charges. So working out what is optimal for you or your clients can be a bit difficult, but we'll be talking about that during the presentation. Now I'm just going to go through the bill. So I can't actually see any questions. I'll just point that out. So hopefully there's not too many questions there, but we'll get to those at the end.
I'll let you know if any come through, Luke.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm just going to go, first of all, I'm going to go through how to read your bill. And I'm going to use AGL bill as an example, but they're all very similar. This is CoPower. This is just another sort of community-owned retailer. And they do some interesting stuff around supporting communities. So they have a community benefit fund where their members decide where to spend money. So on the weekend, we were running an Indigenous housing workshop and they got money from these guys and they're not even their customers. But I'll be using AGL because that's one of the big retailers and the one that most of your clients, or a big one that your clients will be in touch with. Then I'll be going through some rebates and concessions. And pending time, I'll talk about the big wins around energy efficiency in residential bills. This is just to point out that most of how to read your bill sort of information is found on every retailer's website. If not, What's What? They're owned by a Queensland government-owned corporation called Stanwell, and they have a generic how to read your bill guide. So you'll get this with the slide pack. First thing to point out is I have different terminology. So many advocates over years have been asking to standardise this so it's not confusing. When people hear the term peak usage in energy, they think about peak demand around the time of day when it's busy, when it's expensive. It's quite the opposite. It's actually the general usage. So AGL often use the term peak all usage. Origin do the same. Service charge, generally data supply charge or general usage. Take-home messages can be confusing. They use a lot of different terms for different retailers, but quite often they're referring for tariff 11. So look for the tariff 11 somewhere on the bill. And then, of course, the controlled load tariffs have different names as well. Some of them still call it night rate. It's no longer necessarily night rate, but controlled load is a better term. And of course, in the market area, contestable market area, they come at different values. So now I'm just going to go through what the bills look like. So on the front page, most of the bills are quite generic, but people often, when they look at the bill, they look at how much they're getting charged when their bill is due. But there's actually a bunch of really interesting information that can help your clients in particular. And there's a few things that can prevent them from getting the rebates and concessions that they may otherwise be eligible for. So the first one is you think the name and the address should be okay. But you've got to make sure that it's actually, this is where the bill gets sent to. So it's not necessarily the supply address. Obviously make sure the name is correct, the spelling is correct, because this is where they can miss out on concessions if it doesn't match up with their concession card. The second piece of information is around the two numbers at the top right. The first one is when you're having problems with the bill, when you want to get a better deal, when you'd like to speak to the hardship team, or when you're not getting your concessions, etc. That first number there is who you want to call. The second number is when there's faults, and that's generally that goes to the distribution company. So I think this is a Victorian example. City Power there, that should be either EnergyX or Ergon in our case. Then the next piece of information there is the account details. If it lets me change, there you go. This is where you need to make sure it's the proper account holder. It's again spelled correctly. The account number needs to be correct. This is what you'd refer to when you talk to your retailer. But this sample address there is key. That's the one you want to make sure that it's the right supply. Sometimes in multiple unit dwellings, that can be the wrong unit. It can be the wrong household that's getting the bill, or it can just be completely the old address, etc. So make sure that is actually where your client is living. This is an interesting piece. This is obviously just a comparison to both other households and previous use. A few key bits of information here, take with a grain of salt. So top one there, the household. Obviously, if you're a 2-bedroom household or a 3-bedroom household, it allows you to compare if you're in the ballpark of other households. But it depends on what you have. If you don't have gas, you might have electric heating or electric air conditioning, etc. You might have an electric stove. So you might be different to the average household. So you just have to keep that in mind. You also might have health conditions where you require medical heating and cooling, so you're going to be a little bit higher. So it's just as a ballpark. The bottom one, the average daily cost and usage. On the left, it gives you your average cost. On the right, your usage. Information here, again, you can see this is a quarterly bill, so you'll have 3 months that represent the same amount, but that's because it's averaged over. If you have monthly bills, which some clients you can ask for, and some customers in regional Queensland get, you'll see the different peaks. And this information can be really important if you suddenly have a large peak that you can't explain. So I was looking at one on the weekend, and they had one peak that was excessive for April, and it was because the hot water service was on the blink. It was leaking, but still on. So they had a huge bill, and that's how we were able to identify there was a problem. Next bit is just a snapshot, average daily cost and daily use. Again, take it with a grain of salt. There is no average household, so this household doesn't represent any household really at all, because everyone's different. People can range in, say, I lived in a 4 or 5 bedroom house, and we were using 4 kilowatt hours, where others might be using 25 kilowatt hours. Again, it depends on what kind of equipment you're using and whether you have gas and therefore purely electric. This one tells you your history. So your most recent bill is up the top. Have you paid for it? So in this case, $0 means it was paid for. If there's an outstanding amount, that will appear there, and then the new charges. So that's obviously just what's on this bill, and we'll go into that in a bit of detail. It's good to note on this one that date is obviously when it's all due, but that balance brought forward, if you have an outstanding amount, it might actually be due on a different date to the whole account. So that's something to watch out for. Understanding your bill. This frame here is usually a filler. They'll always have understanding your bill, but if they had particular information they want to share, they would put that in there. Usually around special offers, or it might be community events or something else that AGL or your retailer are offering. And this final one, again, similar. They might have other information, but this is where they'll also tell you if there's like change in government regulation that might affect your bill, if there's going to be an increase, if prices are going up. So last year during the war in the Ukraine, the invasion of the Ukraine, there was a big impact. We ended up using more gas in wholesale prices, so everyone's bill went up, and that's where information like that was going in. This is on the bottom of that second page usually, or the third page on some accounts. This is important, this frame here. If you need interpreters for your clients, that's where you can find this information. People that are hearing impaired, and if they have any energy efficiency opportunities. Some of the big retailers offer assistance in energy efficiency. Most will offer some kind of information, but it again depends on the retailer you have. This is another important one. So you want to make sure that the supply address actually matches that third pane I showed you on the first page, the front page of the bill. Make sure that there are no errors. Very rarely does that happen, but sometimes it does. It tells you the supply period, so which period is it in reference to. NMI is a national metering identifier. So every household will have one or more meters, and each meter will have an NMI, and that's what must reflect your bill. And it should be written on the meter somewhere, so you want to make sure that's correct. And then the next bit there is the energy plan. It tells you the name of the energy plan. So this hypothetical bill is a AGL savers plan. Next bit, just a little bit more information. Tells you the meter number, when it was read, and if it was actual or estimated. So there may be reasons why they don't read the bill, and it will have an E or an or the word estimated on your account. The next one is a description. So in this case, peak actually just means your normal tariff 11. and the start and end read and how much in total kilowatt hours you use. And this is where it gets into the nitty gritty. This is where you find a whole bunch of information. So when you're talking to your clients, you want to ask them if they're eligible for concessions or what concession cards they have. And you want to make sure it's in here. You want to make sure you've got your information about any discounts that are being applied or not. So the first bit there, balance brought forward, that's when it tells you if there's any outstanding credits, any outstanding balance, and when that might be due. So if it differs to the main due date. The second piece, new charges and credits, gives you itemizes all the different parts. So in here, you might find other tariffs. You might find time of use tariffs, or if you have solar tariffs, etc., any feed-in tariffs, etc. Some retailers itemize out the processing fee. They might itemize out the different meter charges. Not all do, but if they do, you'll find that here. And the discounts. So I'll be talking a little bit about those later on. Yeah, and so that's repeating that last bit of information. Final bit is this is just the total amount and when it's due, and all the different ways of paying. So some of the names I recognise on the call, you know what some of these are. Send to pay is just an option through Centrelink that allows customers to pay off a certain amount each coming straight out of their welfare payments. If you are having clients that would like to use, pay by through post offices and so on, be a separate bit in there, and you'd want to tear this off to take with you. Most of it's pretty explanatory. Most people use either direct debit or BPay and bill pay. Gas is very similar. I'm not going to go through, just because of time, I'm not going to go through the whole piece again. So it's all the same kind of information. The only real difference is in this pane here. It doesn't do a household comparison because gas can be quite different for different people, especially those in regional Queensland. You might not have reticulated gas, you'll have bottles. So it'd be quite, you don't really get a bill. But again, on that bottom bit, it's averaged out over 3 months, where if you get a monthly bill, it will be you'll be able to see any peaks. Just a piece on the estimation. So by regulation, retailers have to actually read your bill once every 12 months. They usually have contractors to do it. So they might not go and they might not be able to access the meter. There might be dogs, so they actually ask when you know the date to put your dogs on a leash or in the house. We did actually hear one story of a contractor cutting out the word dogs and writing in chicken. So there was a bit of a crazy turkey that was running around and didn't go in the gate because of it. So there could be a range of reasons why, but when they're estimated, if you're usually a low user and for whatever month you use a large amount, and that's the month they estimate, you might be under, and then they go and read it, and suddenly you have a higher bill. So it's important to know when you're going to have your next one read. But if you did have to do a self-read, you need to know how to do it. You need to know when to do it and how to submit it. And this is slightly different for every retailer. But basically, the information you need is the NMI, the National Metering Identifier, and when it's going to be occurring. So you want to make sure you read it around about that time and then submit it via your retailer's website. Each retailer will be slightly different. A couple of reasons why your bill might be high. Obviously, seasonal usage, if you're suddenly using aircon or heating. So I live in a rental, and just yesterday was the first time we put the heater on, so we can expect for the next month or two that our heat will be quite high. We have poor quality house in terms of gaps, so a lot of it just gets wasted. Again, estimated bill, as I've just explained, there might be price increases. So it's been in the media recently. We're expecting prices by 30 to 50% over the next few years. So prices will go up. Have you suddenly had a couple of extra guests or household numbers, someone move in? Has your plan expired? So we'll be talking a bit about that in detail and how that impacts you, and your plan might have gone up. Have you got faulty appliances? Has your fridge door seal broken? Is there a hot water leak? Have you changed your behaviours? Have you, when we all started working from home, our household levels went up. Has someone had a new job and not there yet? So you might have a lower, not there, so home so much, you might have a lower account or bill. Any meter reading anomalies. So this could be human error, or it could be a fault in the meter. Has a discount not been applied? It could be your plan expired, they dropped the discount and it hasn't been put on, or it could have only been short term, not for the whole length of the length of the contract. So if any of those you are wanting to work out what to do, a couple of low-hanging fruit ideas. I'll go through these in a bit more detail. First point of call is to actually call your retailer and have a conversation. When you do ask for the hardship team, make sure they don't put you to the sales team. For obvious reasons, they want to sell you products, where the hardship team would like to work out, in theory, what you can do. Negotiate a payment plan, an affordable offer and plan, and ask about concessions. I'll be going through those in more detail. If you can, contact a free financial counsellor. Not all retailers do that. And reducing your energy use, obviously this is around the energy efficiency, so towards the end we'll be going over that. And if you can upgrade your appliances, if you're not satisfied with your retailer, there's the Energy Water Ombudsman in Queensland, and I'll be talking about those as well. So every account should have a good offer. That means it should suit you for your needs, whether those needs are around affordability or sustainability or other needs. Making sure your concessions are applied, and what's the best payment option for you. So how do you go about doing this? You can ask your retailer for the best offer, but what do you say and what can you expect when you're talking to your retailer? Just on this, I spoke to a guy who worked in social service. He'd done over 1,000 of these calls and got to know really well what to ask for. And one of the take-home messages around all this is, when you talk to your retailer or your client talks to their retailer, let them know that you're looking at other offers, and that content I mentioned earlier, CAC, cost of acquisition and retention, costs them so much because they try so hard to keep clients on board. So if they know you're looking at their competitors, they're more likely to give you a better deal. But these are some of the things you can ask. How long is the contract for? Is it 12 months or is it 2 years? And if you did break it, is there an exit fee? Most retailers don't do that, and there was some conversation around making that illegal. I'm not sure what the status is there, so it may actually be illegal. Can the prices change during the contract period? So is it a fixed term contract and is it a fixed price contract? And when and how will they notify you? Will it be on the bill? Will it be by text or email? How much extra if you don't pay your bill on time? So there are discounts, pay on time discounts. And what happens if you don't pay them on time? Will it be excessive? Will your clients be able to handle those late fees? How and when will you receive the bill? Will it be online? Will it be text messages? Will it be through an app? You don't want to sign up to an offer that's posted, and then by the time you get it, it's too late to pay the bill. So I'm just, slides are taking a while to go through. If there is a discount, you want to make sure it's on the whole bill. It might just be on the variable charge. It might be just on the daily service charge. You want to make sure it's on the entire bill. If not, you want to know what it's attached to, and also how long it goes for. So some of them have a honeymoon period. It's called this because it's really a sweetener for you to take that offer. So when you are looking at new offers, just make sure it's not just a sweetener. And what happens after it ends. So quite often it might just go to that contract, but it might go to a default market offer, a standing offer. And how does that compare to other market offers? When you are doing this, there are a couple of tools that help you. Comes with a bit of a warning. So I'll be talking about Energy Made Easy in a sec, but there are a number of comparator websites. And these are basically websites where you go to the website, you can type in some details, and it will compare different market offers. So those of you who have clients in regional Queensland, this doesn't apply to you because you're all on the Ergon account. In theory, other retailers can operate in the Ergon area, but they don't get the community service obligation. Only Ergon gets that. So in reality, there are very few competitive retailers operating in the Ergon area. But if you are in Southeast Queensland, comes with a very significant warning around these websites. They're not independent. Their commercial model is often that retailers pay them a certain amount of money. So if they switch you over, they get a kick. And they don't have to submit all their offers. It's only some. So I tested this a few years back. I rang up. I was on a company called Energy Locals. They didn't mention them. So I said, oh, what about Energy Locals? And he's like, they're not in your area, sir. I'm like, well, actually, I'm on them already. I was just wanting to see what offers they had. Bit facetious of me, but it did prove a point that they don't cover all offers and not all deals. They are switching sites, many of them, and that means their role is to switch you over. So they'll take your information and someone will call you. Some of them will offer you would have to log in some details. They'll then have some information, so they'll keep trying to market to you. And for those of you dealing with renters, this is one thing that I find particularly interesting is that real estate agents will often attach to a rental application or a new lease an offer to switch for you, and they'll only say we're going to switch you to AGL or Origin usually, but they don't tell you which offer. There could be hundreds of offers out there that won't be best for either yourself or for your client. I don't think they should be able to do this, but it's something to watch out for. And this is the website that I would recommend, the Energy Made Easy. The website is down the bottom there, and you'll get these links. And it does it for both electricity and gas, or one or the other. Pretty simple. You just type in your postcode or your address even. There is an option to import your bill, and it will give you a much more specific output for your needs. It can also include solar feed-in tariffs. And this is just what comes out. So this was just hypothetical, and it shows you all the different offers, and based on the information you provided, it looks like Reamped and Kogan Energy would be the best offer. But again, take it for, have a look at you. If you want to go in real detail, you can have a look at the plan in detail around what kind of disconnection fees, what kind of percentage discounts, etc., can occur. It's run by the Australian Energy Regulator. They are absolutely agnostic as to which retailer you go for. So they don't get any information, they don't collect any information, and they don't get any input or any kickback from who you choose. And you don't have to give any details. The other good thing is it comes in different languages, so there's a drop-down box to select languages. And if you are having trouble, they can call that number. Couple of things to think about when you are comparing contracts is obviously the price of electricity, but also have a think about which is most appropriate for you, in terms of a higher service charge or a higher variable charge. If you're a low energy user and you have a high service charge and a low variable charge, it means energy efficiency is not going to help you much. If you had a lower service charge and higher, variable charge, it means that it might be better for your, getting a lower discounts on your service charge, for example. So there's some nuances there to think about that are a bit hard to work out, but there's just some of the things to consider. Make sure there's different incentives and bonuses being offered, and that they don't cancel each other out. So if you're looking at clients with solar, which for many low-income households miss out, but had someone once get excited because she had a 21-cent feed-in tariff, but she had exorbitant daily service charge. So it would have actually counted out her feeding tariff. So these are just some of the things to look at. If you have existing debt, don't go looking for a new contract. Work out your debt with your current retailer, because once you leave them, they're not obliged to help you out. Also look at the discounts attached to, so the conditions attached to discounts. And if you are with a particular retailer for a long time, it's always worth checking in. You can get a better deal staying with your retailer, but getting a different offer. You don't necessarily have to go to someone else, but do let them know you're looking for someone else, as I explained. So if you are struggling, this is where we get into the nitty-gritty. All retailers have to have a hardship policy, and they have to be published on their website. So there's a new guideline, I say newish, it's about three or so years now. Some hardship policies are better than others. There are a bunch of must-haves that they must by law have in there, and then there are a bunch of other options. So some of the smaller retailers can be good for some of their sort of community engagement and so on, but from a client perspective, some of the bigger retailers can offer better deals. But all of them can make mistakes. All of them can depend on who you're talking to. So those of you on the line who, say, financial counsellors deal with this on your day-to-day. A couple of things you can ask for. You can ask for an extension. That does mean that you end up having to pay on top of your existing accounts, whether it's water, rent, etc. You can go on a payment plan or go on a financial hardship program. So in terms of payment plans, a couple of things they must have. One, they must offer you a payment plan. It should outline the amount of each payment, when those payments are due and how often they will be, and how long it will be for. They should consider what your electricity use is as a household, any other previous payments you still owe, and your capacity. So they will ask around income levels, just so that they know that in theory that they can work out what will be an appropriate payment plan. The next sort of level is going into the hardship programs. So these are the ones where they have to follow the hardship policy guideline. It's binding, it's enforceable, and it must strengthen the consumer protections. The retailers must have processes to identify difficulties. So this can be automated, looking at if you or your clients have missed a couple of payments, then they know that you're likely to be experiencing payment difficulty, and so they can reach out and work with you. One of the things they have to do is notify you that there are incentives, and they have to notify you about financial counselling. Doesn't mean they have to offer it. So the programs, what they must do is have a flexible payment plan. They must waive any late fees that you may be facing and may have. Offer the option around centre pay, so that's when it will automatically come out of any welfare payments your client may have, and provide, as I said, information around concessions and rebates. But the things they may have, and these are often what the bigger retailers offer, is a financial counselling service. So they'll send you to a third-party independent financial counsellor, review the plan and offer, make sure it's suitable for you. So their hardship team can have a look at what are some of the sort of discount concessions and so on, discounts on the bill, whether a high service charge versus a high variable charge, etc., will be appropriate. And some of them will offer energy efficiency advice. Some are just a bit of information that you read. Others will actually send someone out to your home or do a telephone service where they go through your energy use, and some might be able to offer actual replacements. So just on that, we are expecting to hear tomorrow the federal government are announcing their new budget. We don't know what's in it, but we do know we've been told to expect a home electrification package. So we're hoping that's going to be targeted. So there may be something in tomorrow's federal budget that will help low income and rental households. If you are in debt, as I mentioned, don't go to a new retailer. Have a good conversation with your current retailer before you pay your debt off. and work with them for the appropriate way of paying through a hardship program. Some retailers will actually cancel some debts if for the most vulnerable situation, and it's really good to work through a financial counsellor because they have a few tricks up their sleeves. They often have relationships with the hardship team. Call your existing retailer to set up a payment plan. Make sure you are on the hardship program. So even though they're meant to look out for this, they don't always put you on the hardship plan. You can still apply for the Home Emergency Assistance Scheme. If you already have left, still have a word to your old retailer. They don't have to help you. They can send you to a debt collector, but there are a bunch of reasons why they might. They might take you back and put you on a new offer. But if they do that, make sure the new offer that you've already signed up to doesn't include any cancellation fees. So concessions. So there are a number of federal and state-based concessions and rebates. At the moment, Queensland doesn't have energy efficiency rebates, but we are expecting there's a $10 million program the state government have announced, so watch out for that. But in terms of actual concessions, these are the main ones. Queensland government offers a electricity rebate. So there are a bunch of concession card holders, but there's only some that are relevant for each of the different types of concession. The pension concession card, IMI card, the healthcare card, and returned service persons card, those households, if you're the account holder, can get that $372 a year. There's links on all of these as to more information. There's Queensland Government reticulated natural gas. So reticulated basically just means it comes through the pipes. So if you've got LPG bottles, that's often people in regional Queensland, and you can't access these, but those with a gas account can. Need to apply direct to your retailer. And the other thing, if you or your clients live in residential home parks or multi-unit residents, the managers are meant to tell you about what's available. They're the ones who actually have to apply. And again, it's only accessible to seniors and return service people's card. Another one is medical cooling, heating, electricity concessions. So this is around people with particular medical conditions, MS, automatic system dysfunction, loss of skin integrity, severe compromised functioning skills, so mobility. So this can be people with, say, neural conditions. I myself, I have a thing called Guillain-Barré syndrome. I lose the use of my hands in cold weather. Other people with MS and similar conditions, it can be similar outcomes, hypersensitivity to extremes, similar kind of things. Eligibility is around, it has to be air conditioning or heating is required. You hold pensioner concession or healthcare card, and you're the person financially responsible for the bill. Trying to change it, it's not letting me. There we go. This one is slightly different. It's about the medical equipment. The last one was around heating and cooling equipment because of medical needs. This one is about the actual medical equipment itself. So it's around, it's an Australian government payment. It's accessed through Centrelink. It's around the extra costs that comes from running that medical equipment, and it comes as a lump sum payment. And you can actually do this through your carer, whether that's a spouse, a professional carer, or through the patient. This one is Home Emergency Assistance Scheme. So it's part of Smart Service Queensland. It's up to $720 every 2 years, so it has gone up recently. The retailer receives this payment, not the customer itself. And it's to cover basically when you have some emergency services, and it can be either through your gas and or your electricity account. So it's not something I've actually dealt with directly. So financial counsellors have sort of let me, some of the issues around this can be making sure both of your retailers, if you do have separate retailers or gas and electricity account for the same retailer, that they know you're applying against both of those accounts. because they may, once you start the process, they may not allow you to come in on the second one. So contact your retailer before you apply and let them know what the reasons are. You need to hold a current concession code or an income equal to or less than the Australian government maximum income rate for part-time pensioners, or if you're on a hardship or payment plan. So what's it for? Kind of two sort of main areas. So if you've lost your job, if you've recently become separated and therefore have to pay for much of the bill on your own, if there's unexpected illness, injury or disability. And interestingly, if you're a rental property and a housemate moves out and as a household you're struggling to pay the bill. Other things that may be included are to replace a fridge, if you want to replace a washing machine or hot water service, replacement or repairs of vehicles, removalist costs, so if you have to move, especially in leaving from a DV situation, funeral expenses. So these are the ones that are listed, but sometimes the retailer has some discretion, so they might allow you to use it for other reasons. There is one more how-to slide, which I haven't used for time, but that will be in the pack that gets sent out. So failing all that is EWOC. So most of you probably know about Energy and Water Ombudsman in Queensland. There's one in every state. They're free, they're independent. They also have a First Nations section. So if you are identifying as or working with clients who identify as First Nations, they do have a special section to work with you. They will always ask you to have a chat to your retailer first, and then they'll only sort of go into bat afterwards. I didn't say go into bat. Generally, they are independent. They're meant to be non-biased, but they will have a look at what's going on. They'll have a conversation with the retailer and try and resolve any complaints. Also can be used if they're a distribution company, so that's Energex in Southeast Queensland, Ergon in regional Queensland. And they can look at payment plans and disconnections and identify any systemic problems in the market. They also work with regulators, and also QCOS works with them closely around any sort of policy updates and upgrades that are needed. So even if you don't succeed with EWOC, it can go towards improving policy and regulation. When I finished up at YFS and at QCOS, this was a red hot conversation around if you're in an on supply, that basically means that the electricity is included in the bulk rent amount, so you don't get a rent account. Can be caravan parks and some rental properties if you're living with your landlord, for example. Bulk hot water and bottled gas, it doesn't cover those situations. There were some conversations around updating that legislation. The last piece is around NILS loans, so no interest loan scheme. So there's sort of three amounts that you can apply for, up to $2,000 for essential services. So if you want to replace a fridge, washing machines, car repairs, education, so around laptops and technology for university, or if you have medical and dental procedures. You can ask for a bit more if you're applying for a bond and rent in advance, or paying rates, or up to $5,000 for a car and motorcycle. So I see I've only got a few minutes. So last few slides. Couple of key things is it's targeted, it's income assessed. One of the failings of this is for those on the lowest of incomes, often it puts them at risk, so you can't get a NILS loan. We're advocating for more grants, so through the Queensland Government's Energy and Jobs Plan, or in the budget that's to be announced tomorrow. That's where it's available. NILS is the main provider, but there are some other providers. So through that link there, you can find out through your postcode where the nearest provider is. I will call it stop there. I only had a couple of key things in the energy efficiency. Main points were refrigeration, heating and cooling, and hot water, the main ones. So yeah, I do apologise, but I will be sending out some links. The very second last slide is some particular links and information about rental properties and energy efficiency. But if you can target the hot water, But in terms of the property itself, we need good thermal properties. That means insulation. So Canberra has a minimum standard around insulation for all rental properties. We'd like to see something similar in Queensland. So I will stop it there, but you will be receiving slides on this.
Thanks, Luke. There is we've got about 8 or 9 minutes left over. So does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? Otherwise, Luke, I might, if you're happy to, you're welcome to talk a little bit more about energy efficiency if you wish, but I'll just double check the chat here and see if there's any questions. No, it doesn't look like we have any questions. But yeah, did you want to talk a little bit more to energy efficiency, Luke?
Sure. It's just my timer said 56 minutes, so I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I think we're doing very well for time. So
right. Okay, so I'll go back here. Can you see my slide?
Yeah, we can see that.
Yep, great. So energy efficiency is actually something that that a lot of our affordability is based on, and there's some real inequities around energy efficiency for low-income households and rental properties in particular. So it's also one of those opportunities around improving our quality of our homes, around affordability, comfort levels, and therefore health, but also action on climate change, so it allows us to reduce emissions. And it's the cleanest and cheapest energy you don't use, you don't have to pay for. So there's a bunch of sort of different ways we can approach energy efficiency. In Australia, we perform really poorly. So in tomorrow's budget, you're going to hear the term energy performance, which includes energy efficiency. Energy performance refers to energy efficiency, also refers to electrification, behaviours, even like batteries. So it can refer to, it's a much broader term, but energy efficiency doesn't operate on its own. There are what's called demand response. So in the middle of the day when we're using a lot of solar, if we can move a lot of our heating to the middle of the day, for example, if we have electric heating, it means we can use solar. However, at the moment, we've got poor quality housing with no insulation. So if we tried to heat during the day, it would still be cold in the evenings when we really need it. So we need to have insulation. So energy performance is the collective of having the right behaviours, the right thermal properties of the home, and the right access to technology, all of which is missed out by low income and rental properties. So this comes from a little booklet there. The link there is by the state government. And this is a couple of years old now, but generally the three biggest energy use opportunities in a home are in Queensland are your refrigeration, your hot water, and your heating and cooling. I will point out that if you did click on that link, the energy efficiency link on the bottom, there are a couple of errors in there. And you can see that about half of a household's use is all the different appliances. So for cooking, TVs and entertainment, so on, and even lighting, portable lighting, so talking about lamps and so on, are essentially other appliances. And in that booklet, it talks about if you turn things off on the wall, you can save energy. That's not always the case. Sometimes you end up spending a lot of time turning them on and off. But because it's about half of the house, so appliances still are important, even though I'm going to go through the three main ones. There's two kind of main ways of looking at it. One is what's called passive solar design. The other is called active energy or active design. Basic difference is passive, it means it's using natural systems. You don't have to input energy to make something work. Whereas active energy, you have to plug it in or it uses power. Main areas around passive design need to be designed for your climate. So a house in Stanthorpe compared to Brisbane, compared to Cairns, compared to Western Queensland, compared to the coast, all have different needs. Orientation, which way is it facing? So that picture there is is it facing north? So that big part of the bigger face, you want to face that north. If it's facing south, it might not get any sun during winter and lose a lot of heat out the windows. Does it get shading? Is there passive solar heating? So are the walls able to hold heat during the day? Passive cooling, that's referring to the shading as well. Does it have airflow? Is it insulated? Thermal mass is a property around stones. So we've all walked on hot concrete or black road compared to, say, white concrete or marble. The black road is going to be hotter. The white concrete will still be hotter compared to the grass. So that property where it retains the heat, that's called thermal mass. And of course, glazing is a big issue as well. So passive solar design, you want to use to keep the summer sun out during winter, but the winter sun in during winter. You want to make sure the radiation is trapped by greenhouse action through the right glazing when you want to warm the house, or you want to make sure it keeps it out. And again, trapped heat is trapped by thermal mass. So there's a couple of different ways of looking at it, but that diagram basically shows that during the winter, that sun on the right is going to be lower to the horizon, and during summer it's going to be high. So when we go back to that previous picture, you want to make sure those eaves are blocking out the summer sun but letting in the winter sun, and it means you don't have to pay for energy to heat and cool so much. Insulation. If we have poor thermal properties of the house, it just goes out the gaps, goes out through your roof in particular. So this shows you the one on the right, picture on the right, that most of the properties is around the roof, which is why one of the reasons why Canberra has a minimum standard around ceiling insulation of R5, and that just is a reference to how good it is at stopping the heat transfer. You can go higher than R5, but for every extra R value, it only adds a little bit more. So R5, R6, R8 are kind of like the accepted amounts. But you still want to do underfloor and walls as well. So we would actually rather see the whole house having a thermal property or performance property rather than just have insulation of a certain amount. And this just shows you where all the gaps are. So in a lot of poorer quality housing, which many of our household clients, many of our clients live in, are generally what they call 1 or 2 star. Minimum standard for a new house as of a few weeks ago around Australia, and the National Construction Code is 7 star, and it's up to states to implement that. So Queensland has agreed to implement 7-star housing. There is an implementation phase, but that's for new build. For existing building, it's usually around 1 to 1 and 2 or 3 star. So we would advocate that all existing houses needs to get to 5 star, and it's partly because of all these gaps. There's also things like material use. So windows might have an aluminium frame, water heat just escapes through that, gaps through the chimney, through the floor. Where I'm sitting now, I've got the heater on, but I can feel the cold air coming across my ankles because I've got poor gaps. And as a renter, there's not much we can do about it. But if you could, these are some of the things. Filling in the gaps around the windows and the doors is one of the main things. But you want to be careful around ventilation versus drafts. So ventilation, you need to keep down the mold. So if we start sealing everything and start using active heating and cooling, you want to make sure that you do have the opportunities to let natural ventilation come in. And so that can be through the fans in the bathroom or opening windows, etc. Just quickly, it's a no-brainer. Windows are the cheapest form of energy cooling, but you want to make sure you have a secure house. And the windows on the bottom right, a lot of older houses have those. Usually when I run a workshop, I sort of demonstrate these, but it's hard to show on a screen. But you want to, if the air is coming, say, from the right or to the left of these, you only want to open half of these, because the way they work is actually blowing across them, and having one of them open pulls it into the house. If it's running perpendicular, then you open both of them. Seems straightforward. Many people know how to use them, many don't. The other thing is around keeping them in shade. If you do have metal ones, some of the new metal ones have heat sinks inside them, so it's not as big an impact. Wooden ones in some areas are not allowed in building code because of fire risk. So there's a few things to consider there. Shading, what you don't let in means you don't have to heat. You don't have to cool down as much. Also, it can create still air. So that bottom left one, it creates a little bit more still air, so it adds a little bit more insulation and stops airflow into the house. Biggest impact though is around direct sunlight. So that top right one is angled so that in winter, you can't see it from this angle, but in winter it lets the sun in, but in summer it shades it from entering the space. One on the left, if you have evergreen plants all year round, it stops the winter sun coming in, but if you have deciduous, then it's going to stop it during winter. And the bottom one is just just a much more robust example. Active heating and cooling, so mostly air conditioning, but electric, gas and gas heaters, heat pumps, underfloor heating, not as big an issue in Queensland, but is in some places like Stanthorpe. Wood heaters, there is a movement to ban wood heaters because of the health impacts, and of course mechanical shading and ceiling fans. Just to put it in perspective, the difference between heating and cooling costs for using natural ventilation. Water, this is the big one. This is usually around a quarter of a household's energy bills. Having efficient shower heads. Note about the hot water service. Some people ask if we can turn it off when they leave, go away for holidays. Yes, you can. Depends on the service though. But make sure you turn it on for half an hour before you start using it, because there can be a health risk from bacteria. Make sure it's sized correctly, especially if you're on a controlled tariff 11 or 33. If it's too small and then you end up having a lot of people coming to stay, or you have a sudden increased need of hot water, you end up using your kettle and pay more. So make sure you have the right service size for your household demand, but really get a heat pump. And a heat pump is like a fridge. So it looks like they look the same from the inside, but it basically extracts the heat energy from the air and puts it into the heat space. So reverse cycle air conditioners are often heat pumps, and they're a more efficient heater than portable heaters. But if you did have a booster, some of them are automatic, but make sure you have it on a timer, or you use your oven alarm, or just your phone these days, so it doesn't stay on. A lot of the old ones.
Sorry, Luke, I'm just thinking we might have to stop there. We've gone a couple of minutes over, but thank you so much, everyone, for staying on. We do have a few slides left. Luke's got some really great tips in there, and we will share the slides with you in the post-event email so that you can go through all that. It just made me realise that we probably should have made this webinar a bit longer because there's so much to cover in this topic, but we'll hopefully do something again in the future, and you will have access to all that information. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much to Luke Reade from Energetic Communities Association for presenting today. You shared some really fantastic information, Luke, and I think it's been really helpful, not only for people to help their clients, but also really helpful in our own lives as well. So it's been great. So everyone, you'll see a poll that will pop up on your screen. So it'd be really appreciated if you could fill in that poll so we can find out how you found today's workshop. And I also just wanted to mention that we do have another webinar coming up on the 17th of May. So that webinar is an in conversation with Mick de Brenny, who is the Minister for Energy, Renewables and Hydrogen. And Mick will be discussing how Queensland communities will benefit from transitioning to a low carbon future. And that event, I'll just pop it in the chat now. That one is free for QCOS members to attend. So we hope to see you at that one. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for attending today. If you've got any webinar requests related to water or energy, please let us know. And thank you so much again to Luke for presenting today.
No worries, it's a pleasure.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.